Hi, Mauve. I hope you're well today.
Hello.
Okay,
Doing
so
wonderful.
today Mauve is going to be talking about the project Agregore, and let's take it away. So, what is Agregore about?
Yeah, so Agregore is a web browser which integrates peer to peer protocols the same way that regular browsers integrate access to web servers. So, anywhere where you have HTTP, you can have something like Hyper or IPFS or BitTorrent or any other peer to peer protocol that we can get in. And the main goal of it is to make it easy to use these protocols to make local first web apps, to just have simple JavaScript and HTML, and to publish it directly to these peer-to-peer protocols from within Agregore without having to go through a third-party service or server.
So, who would you say Agregore is for? Your target audience. Who would you say they are?
Yeah, I think my target audience is people that are interested in getting into web programming, but don't necessarily want to go into like React and Node.js and Webpack and all of the really fancy frameworks. Generally, people that want to hack around. Longer term, though, I want to target people working or living in community mesh networks where they are more off grid or using infrastructure that is maintained by their community rather than a third party ISP. So at the moment, it's people with internet that want to hack around a little bit, but longer term, I'm hoping we can have this be a replacement for the current like corporate web.
Thank you. So, what birthed Agregore? I mean, what made you, think about it as a project?
Yeah, so before Agregore, there was the Beaker browser, which integrated DAT as protocol handlers, and it added custom APIs for working with those protocols. And around the time Beaker was pivoting away from DAT and more towards like ATEC and some of the other stuff Paul Frazee was working on, I was working on a project called Natakanu with some indigenous communities here in Canada. Specifically, these are groups out of Montreal. So they wanted to make a peer to peer file transfer app for indigenous communities so that they could work with exchanging data on their local networks instead of having to rely on like Google Drive or some sort of cloud based infrastructure. And so we were working with them to make an Electron app. And as part of that, I was integrating protocol handlers into Electron for doing stuff like image previews and stuff. And I found that it was actually really easy to do. And I was like, you know what? Beaker's cool, but I want to take a radically different approach. And then I just took a radically different approach and started working on Agregore. And kind of, it's just been going ever since. So this was in like 2019, 2020-ish.
That's a good incentive. Really, that's a nice one. Would you say that all parts of Agregore are open sourced? I mean, if they are, where can the code repositories be found?
Yeah, absolutely. So all of the code is up on GitHub. And so most of it is under the Agregore Web GitHub organization. And so that's the browser source code and a bunch of the extensions. We do also make use of just a bunch of random Node.js modules. So those are just spread mostly around GitHub. So if you want to see like every piece of open source code that Agregore uses, you might have to dig around a little bit.
All right, all right. So, how is Agregore using hypercore protocol, or how does it plan to use hypercore protocol?
Yeah, so that's one of the protocols integrated into Agregore. In fact, I recently published version 2.0.0 of Agregore, which comes with the latest version of Hypercore, which has now been renamed to Hole Punch. And so you can use it to load data from Hyperdrive or publish data to Hyperdrive and interact with it from peer to peer web apps. So I use it as one of the protocols for doing peer to peer data transfer.
That's nice. I see how Hollow Punch is really beneficial for a lot of this project, and that's great. That's great. But how is Agregore funded, or what are the plans to sustain this project?
Geez, it's mostly been grant funding, and also I do a lot of consulting on peer-to-peer stuff in general. And so companies come to me when they want to get their peer-to-peer protocols working, and as part of that, I develop a lot of open source modules. We've also recently gotten a grant from the Filecoin Foundation to work on some tutorials, or I might try to apply for some grants to get, say, Agregore mobile touched up with dev tools and stuff like that.
That's really good plan. And I really hope that you could get as much funds as you want to push this project forward. But what are the plans for Agregore in the next few months, in the next year?
I just released the new version that has the latest version of hypercore and Electron, and part of that is to coincide it with the new release of distributed press, which is another project I'm working on, which makes it easier to publish peer-to-peer websites or publish to the DWeb. And we're planning on using those two technologies combined with the Nimble mesh network in a box project so that we can deploy kind of like a package where you can set up a mesh network, you can install Agregore on your devices to access data, and you can have the mesh network publish like information on how to use it on the peer-to-peer web. And users can then author new data and exchange data with each other using peer-to-peer web apps. So that's kind of the main goal for this year, of making the documentation better so that so that people coming to the project know how to use it, and making it easier to use it on mesh networks and to set up mesh networks. Yeah, we're not sure where exactly, but I'm guessing we'll probably partner with some of the communities in the global south that Wacoma, the makers of Nimble, are already working with.
Okay, you have all your goals planned out, and I really like that you're working towards them. It really shows that you want Aggregate to grow, and that's a plus. But what happens when someone wants to join the community or contribute to the project? How does that work?
Yeah, so the best way to get involved is to join us on Matrix or Discord in our chats. And that's kind of where we chat most of the time and discuss random things. But also, we use GitHub issue tracking to track issues. There's some to-dos on there that are marked as good first issue. So if someone has time and wants to work on that, then they could comment, on the GitHub issue, and I could give any sort of guidance or mentorship that's needed. So in the past, we've had people just kind of come up because they were curious, and we would just slowly collaborate on adding new features or like fixing bugs together. Yeah, so either Matrix and Discord for like a live chat, or GitHub issues for tracking new features or helping contribute features and bug fixes.
I wonder why Agregore? What does Agregore mean? Why that name?
Yeah, so it is a portmanteau of the word aggregate and egregore. And an egregore is kind of like a magical entity that exists shared between a lot of people's minds. And so Agregore is kind of like a project which seeks to aggregate data from all of these different protocols and make them available to people that want to use them. So it's kind of interface between the data and people.
That's nice. Intentful. All right. I don't know if do you have anything to say that I haven't asked? Something that would, help people to understand Agregore more?
Yeah. So I think one thing I want to get across is that Agregore is a browser, but it's just kind of one piece of the larger thing I'm trying to make, which is a holistic approach to local first software. Agregore is there to kind of have a way to load applications and write applications, but stuff like community-run mesh networks are important to build up infrastructure. Stuff like governance and figuring out how people can cooperate without central authorities is another piece that we're exploring in different communities. The other thing ultimately is figuring out how to get our materials needs with decentralization too. Like, can we have more decentralized food production that's more local, or medicine, or anything else? So ultimately, Agregore it's kind of like a stepping stone from this like tech space of making the tech less centralized and putting power over technology and information into people's hands, so that we can kind of take the tech to the side and start dealing with the things that actually matter, which are more social issues and material needs of people. Yeah, so I think if you're not into the browser part itself, but you're into the social stuff, I'm still very interested in talking and figuring out how we can collaborate in the larger picture with all of the other groups I'm working with.
That's good. And, I really hope that a lot of people can relate to Agregore and, join the community and contribute in as much ways as they could and help you. Well done, Mauve. I like the work you've done on Agregore, and I hope you achieve all your goals that you've set. I really hope so. Well done.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a slow path, but we're traveling down it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for giving time to speak briefly about Agregore. Thank you for answering our questions and telling us so much about Agregore. Thank you.
Thank you too. It was lovely speaking with you.
All right then. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks.